3, 2, 1, boom, let's go.
It's life outside the box.
I told you. I tried to pre-warn you. That's how it's good.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy that?
I'll go with the 10.
Oh no, that's too generous.
I'm a people pleaser.
You can join in with him at the end if you want.
I didn't know what to expect. I thought there was going to be a bit more harmony to that, but room for improvement.
Okay, well, I guess we're going. We started. So we're going to have a little chat to start off with, just with how everyone's week's been.
Wait, first, who is this guy?
Go on, you can do it. You can do that. Well,
So if you guys haven't seen, if you're not joined with us on the visual side of things, you probably heard his voice. We've got Big Sean with us today. Not only does he have a fabulous moustache, but some of the biggest glutes that I've seen on a human male of all time. So he's going to share, hopefully, some awesome knowledge with us.
El Natural glutes, by the way. No implants. No implants.
no Brazilian butt lifts.
No. All me, baby.
Go on, Sean, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
My name's Sean McInroy. I've been a personal trainer in Sydney, Australia for the past 7-8 years. In Bali at the moment on a bit of a holiday/tour, the first time in a few years due to a global pandemic we're all familiar with. And I specialize in building strength, competency, confidence, self-sufficiency in the people I work with. I have a lot of that, all of the above, through my training experience, and sort of organically fell into that style of coaching, just through being a run-of-the-mill PT originally at the gym, and found a niche developing people's strength and confidence, independency, all that sort of stuff, because I felt so confident and competent with what I was doing in the gym. And I use the word organic a lot, but it sort of just felt like a natural progression to bestow that upon people I was working with, because that was, I found pretty quickly, was a commonality that was lacking in a lot of people, and why they wanted to see a trainer or why they go to the gym in the first place. They're not confident in how they look or how they feel about themselves or that sort of stuff. And the fulfillment you get, for you guys would know, the fulfillment you get from helping someone is significant. So became something that initially was just another job to start with, but it's something that people ask me from time to time, like, what would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? And fucked if I know.
You'd still be training though.
I'd still be training, yeah. Like
passion.
My experience that I bring to the coaching front comes from 12 to 15 years of doing things inefficiently, getting results in spite of those inefficiencies. So my ethos as a coach is more or less to be the trainer that I wish that I bumped into when I was a teenager, when I was sort of coming up. I made a lot of mistakes listening to the wrong people, but that's what makes me passionate about what I do now, is to help people be more efficient with what they're doing, dispel not necessarily bullshit, but things that sound logical, by breaking down and be like, well, I understand the rationale that got you to that point, and believing X, Y, or Z, but let me explain why that is sort of just left of center, so to speak. So at the moment, I've got an online strength school, which I've sort of my first dipping of my toe into the online pool, and looking to develop that further this year. Nothing has incentivized me more than being here in Bali and living the lifestyle and the freedom associated with being over here, more so than, that's pushing me a lot to do that even more this year. As I was speaking to you guys earlier about writing seminar structure, that's something I'm wanting to do this year as well. So there's a lot of things I want to do this year. That's basically where I'm at to this point.
I'm just going to pick up on one little thing you said there, which is something I really enjoy, because it takes a lot of confidence to realise that you've got some good results, but you're probably not doing it the best way. And the confidence to be able to strip that back and say, okay, well, I got the results, but how am I going to do this more efficiently? And a lot of trainers will feel maybe not confident enough to turn around and say, maybe these protocols are not the best.
Well, it comes down to playing devil's advocate, right? And if something's working, like if whatever it may be, a personal relationship, business, training, if something is working, you tend not to look at it closely enough because it's working. It's getting a result. But is it getting as good of a result as you could be? And you need to be critical with what you're doing and what you're dissecting, but appreciate the results. Okay, good. And then you need to learn what it is. How do I need to dissect what I'm doing in order to take it from good to great, sort of thing. And it was only through, for myself, for my development, it wasn't until, again, about 12 years or so into my my own training, that I did some formal education beyond my initial personal training certifications, that I was exposed to a particular man named Tony Butaji in Sydney, and completely opened my eyes as to a different perspective when it came to how I viewed training and exercise and movement and programming and all that sort of stuff. And it all made perfect sense. He was a great communicator, and it all sort of, I refer to it as my enlightenment period. And it showed me the inefficiencies of the decade plus of training I was doing before that. And I genetically is what I describe myself as a hyper responder, one of the type of people, athletically inclined, started lifting weights at a young age, responded well, get good results. You don't know that you're not doing it in the most efficient manner. I trained very typical bodybuilding split: Monday, chest, back Tuesday, leg Wednesday, Thursday, shoulders, and Friday arms. I did that for years, and that will get a result. But it's only when you become more formally educated and you understand efficiencies and things like that, you're like, oh, okay, I could have maybe gotten that quicker if I'd gone different paths. But if I hadn't gone through such a clunky, unknowingly period, I wouldn't be so incentivized to then help people not do that. You know what I mean? So no regrets from that standpoint. But it's hard to dissect something. Well, you don't know what you don't know. So education for me is key. But you're not going to be able to. It's hard to look at something which is working. It's getting a result and think, all right, what's working, what isn't working as well. So it takes time.
I think that's super interesting, as well as how important it is if someone's out there, to work with a professional, because, like you said, there's so many easy mistakes you can make throughout your training career that you could be doing much better if you had someone guiding you through these and you were learning from mistakes they made and the things that they've learned over their kind of career that they can transfer into you. So
well, I mean, we talk about it a lot, but CPD is the most important thing ever in our business, because for all of us, it's super easy for people to go and do a super quick qualification and call themselves a personal trainer. And there's nothing wrong with starting there, but you've got to do CPD, you've got to do continuing personal development, continuous, to make yourself better, to make yourself a better athlete, to make yourself better for your clients, to make yourself better in every stage kind of thing. And that sounds like kind of what you kind of did.
Yeah, like I was training for probably 10 years or so. 10 years, maybe 8 years, I think, before I did my personal training certifications. And I remember at the time when I did my PT certs, my head was up my ass. I wasn't a dickhead, but I thought I knew everything because I'd already been training for 8 years, and it was a reflection in retrospect how little I actually knew, because again, I thought I knew it all. My mind was closed off to learning more, because I'm like, I've gotten good results, and I had. I know, yeah, what else is there to know? Yeah. And I knew so little, I didn't know how much more there was to know. And again, it was just I wouldn't say by happenstance, I got recommended onto Tony's courses, but I suppose we crossed paths at the right time in terms of my willingness to be open to learning more. And he has great communication skills. That's one thing I also picked up. And one thing that lets down a lot of trainers, in my experience, when I come across other trainers about helping them out or just in general, is their poor communication. You might have a great understanding, personal experience, training yourself, training other people, but if your ability to communicate, whether it be a complex idea training-wise or something more simple, if you can't explain it in a digestible way to someone who is completely unfamiliar to the language in which you're speaking, albeit English, but the language of movement, so to speak, then it's useless to you. It's useless to them. So one thing I learned from him is how to communicate better. And so that was only through, again, that further development, that further education, and refining that further practically with people.
Yeah, I think with that as well, it's great for you to have all that information, but like you just said, you having that information and then you portraying that information into a client who doesn't have the same understanding you do, you then need that completely new skill to take all the knowledge you have and then word it in a way that they are able to understand and digest and actually understand what you want them to do and to learn from what you're saying. That's not in a crazy scientific way where they're thinking, oh, what is this guy going on about? If you say, this is what I want to do, this is why you're doing it, and you can take what you've learned and introduce that into your client and they can digest and understand it. That's what we really want.
Yeah, my goal is to, I think Einstein, without trying to sound too smart, I'm going to butcher his quote. It's like, explain you to know something well enough, you need to be able to explain it to like a 6-year-old. And the way I sort of paraphrase that, and I think it might be from Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist, if you can't explain a complex idea simply, you don't know it well enough. And even though we might be speaking English, what I understood over time talking to people that I took ideas and movement and training principles for granted. It wasn't until I was training people who were intelligent but outside of the training space. And so I'm speaking English in sort of basic words, but what I understood over time was that I'm explaining something verbally. They need to translate that into a physical action on their end. They might be able to understand the words that I'm saying. It's simple English, but their proprioceptive ability to turn my verbal cues into a physical action, I might as well be speaking another language, because I essentially am. So you develop a lot of analogies and you learn a certain way of communicating in which you get a lot of these aha moments from, oh, okay, oh, right, yeah, oh, yes, okay, now I understand. And it's you just, through personal experience, training yourself, and then that formal education, upskilling, putting enough hours in, training enough people from a wide-ranging backgrounds, you develop a good ability to communicate and then further that.
Yeah. With that as well, I like to say to my clients and people that I work with, I like to say to them, if you don't understand why I'm telling you to do this, and you don't understand the mechanics of what it needs to go into to achieve what I'm trying to ask you to achieve, then you're never going to be able to learn it. So it's stripping back to, this is why we're doing it, this is why you should feel it, and this is how we do it. As soon as they have a complete understanding of what they're actually trying to achieve and why they're doing that, then suddenly they can start to think, oh yeah, it's starting to click, I get it.
I do the same thing, right? It's pleasing to hear you say that, because what I found pretty early on, because people will want the result, right? But they're not interested in the process. Well, they need to buy into the process to try hard to get the result, because no one can do the work for them. And what I found pretty early on was that in order to get buy-in to the process, so people actually try, whether they're training with me or they're by themselves, is that I need to create greater dimension to what it is they're doing. So if I'm and the difference between instructing someone and coaching them. So instead of just giving them basic instruction, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. If you add dimension to your explanations and your coaching, and you educate them in the process, it turns like a one-dimensional instruction into a multi-dimensional coaching experience where they're learning something, and then when they're that theoretical framework of what you're explaining is essentially that foundation in which the practical experience can be attached to, and it sort of solidifies their experience rather than just being told what to do. Think of a class setting when rightly so you can only be so coachy. You basically give instruction, walk away, because there's a bunch of other people you need to attend to at the same time. But if you're working, which is my I work one-on-one mainly, and so it's just sort of I can just sort of work people much more acutely in a coaching style, developing their understanding much more deeply, and attaching both that theoretical framework of what they're doing to create buy-in, and then the practical application. They can feel themselves. They can feel the nuances of the explanation that the theory that I'm explaining. Otherwise, just that basic instruction won't allow them to develop over time, because it's not good enough, basically. But also they don't, from a marketing and sales standpoint, they won't appreciate the fact that there is more to learn if you only tell them that they only need to know to put their knees out in their squat or whatever the cue may be. Oh, that's all I need to worry about. If you just show them that it's a one-dimensional exercise, then once they feel that they've learned that one dimension, as I was, in terms of my development as a trainer, like when I first started, I thought I knew everything because I didn't know what else there was to learn. I thought, you know what I mean? You don't look for further, sweet. I barely paid attention in my certifications because I thought I knew everything already. As soon as I became exposed to a higher level of potential education, I was like really sat back and be like, oh, okay. And now I still talk to Tony all the time, and get a lot from him and just look for further education because you realize, and the same thing is transferable with clients. The more you educate them and show them, that's why I've had clients who are completely self-sufficient and competent, but they still train with me for years and have been because they're because they see, I won't smoke on my ass, but they see so much value that I can continue to provide for them because I've opened their eyes and opened the doors to what they can continue to learn.
Yeah, it's reassuring for them knowing that you're continually trying to progress with yourself and your learning, so you're able to bring that back into them. And you're like, well, next week he might come with me with a new training protocol or a new idea that he's gone out and learned. So they're willing to invest in that for their future because you're like a verified trainer that's actually looking at improving himself, which he can then transfer on to his clients.
I think the big take home there for the viewers is the difference between coaching and instructing. And I think probably the guys at home, even at school, when you were at school, you probably had some subjects that weren't particularly good, but because the teacher was better at coaching you, you enjoyed those more. And you probably can all relate to that back home and being in those experiences.
Mate, I did. I remember I stayed at school till year 12, final year of school, simply because I had nothing else to do. I wanted to leave, but I was not, nowhere to go. And I remember I took geography in year 11 and 12 last 2 years, not because I was interested in geography, but the teacher was one of those teachers that like went ham in decorating the classroom, and like she had like bean bags that she made in the back of the classroom, and when the year 7s were in there, if we had a free period, if we were quiet, we'd still fuck around with them, but we could sit at the back and hang out because like she was that sort of like invested level of teacher, and so you wanted to do her classes. And so again, it's a good comparison between someone who's sort of just showing up to sort of like to run through the curriculum versus someone who's got the curriculum and goes, all right, cool, how can I make this as digestible and engaging as possible so the participants, the kids, or the clients in our instance, will pay attention and get the results that they want.
I think that may just be geography teachers though, because when I was saying this, I was thinking about my geography teacher.
Oh, right. No,
I was thinking in my head when you were saying that, I was thinking Miss Skiffington, if you're listening at home. I was thinking she was somebody who went above and beyond to make sure that you understood the layers of what we're saying and not just getting a tick in the book so you can get your mark.
Yeah, I love that, and bringing that into the coaching world. If you are doing classes or personal training, if you use that analogy of a woman, a geography teacher, whatever, that's able to make teenagers want to come in and do her class even if it's something they're not interested in, if you can portray that in your coaching and you can have that in the same environment where you're able to provide a fun environment and somewhere that people want to come into, then it's great for the people that are coming, but also on the business side of things as well, your business is going to be booming because people are going to want to come and be part of it, and everyone's going to grow much quicker because it's going to be an enjoyable experience for everyone.
Well, I think on that note, what I found like early on training people and sort of translated this into sort of the content that I've sort of since been doing online is that most people, like I said before, most people want the result from training, but in order to push themselves and work hard enough to facilitate that result, they need to be enthused and need to be excited enough about and enjoy their training experience enough. And so, rather than focusing too much about maybe the formulaic structure of sets and reps and whatever the structure may be, obviously you need guidance that way, but understand from a trainer's perspective, what is your objective? My objective is to for my client to have an enjoyable time. All right, cool. Because if they enjoy themselves, then one, they're going to come back from a business standpoint, good for retention, but that sets the foundation for the result. If they enjoy themselves, all right, cool. And that's why as a trainer, you've got to be a certain type of person. You've got to be a very personable individual and a chameleon of sorts. From one person to the next, you've got to match their energy and you've got to shapeshift almost. And to me, that's sort of organically been who I've been growing up. And if you get that enjoyment and understand that's what your objective is, from again, that's why people continue to train with me. It's like not because I'm teaching them methods or anything which is like out of this world crazy or groundbreaking. It's just that they enjoy the experience. They're being educated along the way, being empowered with that education. That they can train hard because I can't lift the weight for them, and they can continue to get results. It's pretty simple, but I think a lot of people maybe overthink it, don't think about that necessarily, maybe too structured in their processes and think, all right, they need to do these reps and these sets or whatever, and don't actually think, don't ask the right questions. Why does this person want to see me? Why does this person want to train? Why do they want to achieve the result they do? Or they want to look better, whatever that may mean to them. It's like, all right, cool. Have you unpacked why they want to look better? And then the better you unpack that, the better you can facilitate their experience. At the end of the day, it's their me time. You know, if you generally ask them questions, how they're doing, how's your weekend, and remember things that they've gone through, that's what they're going to. Some of the best feedback I've had from clients when it comes to this, that's a great session, they've done very minimal work because we've just had great chats and they've unpacked and unloaded whatever might have been on their mind, and then, you know, every 5 minutes we've done a set of deadlifts or something, and they've loved it, and that just reinforces that idea to me that it's about the experience that they have. And obviously not every session is going to be like that. It's not going to be awfully productive over time, but understanding that is the underpinning foundation of what we should be looking to produce for them.
Well, there's two things there that are super interesting. We will move on quickly to the questions in a minute, but I
told you I could talk underwater.
the kind of what we're talking about there is motivation factors as well, whether they're intrinsic or extrinsic. And obviously people with intrinsic motivation factors are more likely to be successful because they're doing it for themselves, they're not doing it for anything else. So we've spoke about that before on the podcast, and something which I think we're both quite passionate about. And also the transferable skills there when we're nutrition programming. So a question I get asked a lot is, what's the best nutrition? What's the best diet for me or whatever? And the simple answer is one that you can stick to and you enjoy. The best plan for you is something you can stick to and something you enjoy. And it's the same with training.
100%. The same with any plan, right? Like whether it be nutritionally, whether it be a training plan, whether it be a financial budget, just because something looks good on paper. And that's why I like, the relatability and the analogies of using, whether it be budgeting, nutrition and training, whatever the sort of big things in life, it's like there's so many similarities and carryovers, right? So if your income is X per week and 80% of that you want to save $100,000 or $10,000, and you'll get there in 6 months if you save this much, but then you're left skint for each week. It's like, well, that's not sustainable for the next 6 months. On paper it might get you there quicker, but you're barely covering rent. You've got no money for food. Well, if you stretch it out to 12 months, you can live a more reasonable and comfortable life. You're guaranteed to get there, and it might take you longer, but you'll actually get there. Same thing goes with any sort of plan. Same thing goes with nutrition or training and things like that. So yeah, it's not complicated, but it's again, it's that process that people need to appreciate.
It's just transferable skills in everything we're doing. So we're going to move on now quickly to the questions from the viewers. So we have had actually 5 this week, but we'll focus on the first 4 questions sent in from the viewers. So the first one was, I don't feel like eating post-workout, any advice? So we'll just quickly chat about the whole point of what a post-workout meal is. So all we're trying to do is we're trying to get an aid on recovery, a quick start on recovery. So all we're trying to do is we're trying to eat some kind of simple carbohydrates to spike insulin levels. All insulin's going to do is it's going to regulate blood sugar, and it's going to open up the muscles and allow us to refuel them with muscle glycogen. Super simple. And we're trying to take on some protein because we're just trying to get a head start on muscle protein synthesis. That's all we're doing post-workout. Now, Sam laughs at me every day at 4 o'clock in the gym because I'll drink some chocolate milk. Because I'm the same kind of person. I don't feel like eating when I finish working out. So I'll drink some chocolate milk. We're lucky here in the shops because it's like a 4-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein, and it's simple carbohydrates, sugars, and we're getting obviously dairy protein. So that's super simple. So for me, I take on some chocolate protein some chocolate milk directly after. But if you've got a client who you're saying we're trying to get an aid on recovery straight away, quick start on recovery, but they don't want to eat straight away, what kind of advice would you give to them?
To be honest, I wouldn't really worry about it too much. Like, as long as someone, like, that anabolic window post training is actually quite large. And if someone isn't hungry immediately after, then I would just sort of advise, as long as they're getting in whole foods, ideally, and it's more about like the day on average, right? So as long as across the day they're getting in sufficient protein, carbohydrates, fats, and good nutrients across the day, and their post-training meal is within a few hours of training, then it's absolutely fine. Would it be better if it was closer to immediately finishing? Sure, but the difference between getting it in immediately after or a few hours after, it's trivial at best.
I mean, this is actually a question from an athlete. So obviously, sports nutrition and body composition nutrition are two totally different things.
Well, that's exactly right. So if we're talking Gen Pop,
Yeah.
which is myself,
Yeah.
us here, even if we might train hard and might be more athletically inclined or might be trained to a higher capacity than, say, the average, that we don't have sport-specific needs and goals. And if we're dealing with an athlete, obviously, then there's more variables in the equation in regards to their other training modalities. They're probably maybe training multiple times a day. And whatever they may be doing, it's one of those things where you're needing to take your nutritional intake needs to be more finely tuned, and you'll find that an athlete will be eating when they're not hungry, because they need their meal time. Their meals need to be timed appropriately to support their training output. So, but the general public, just as long as you're eating well, it's sort of just generalized. As long as you're eating well enough, across the whole day, eating sufficient calories and then macros to support whatever goals you may be looking to achieve. We don't need to overcomplicate it too much.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Move on to the next
We
one.
can move on. Okay, so we've kind of touched upon this a little bit already, but I'm super interested to hear your answer. What is your coaching philosophy, and who has influenced you the most?
Well, I did touch on that before. So Tony Butaji, who's a coach, I'm looking to do some stuff with Tony this year actually. I have a lot of trainers that follow me online and who have personally reached out as well, looking for like mentorship. I've done a lot of people that have come in and done some sort of just like sitting in and shadow work, sort of seeing how I do stuff, which I'm more than happy to do. So skin off my nose. But Tony has done a number of like mentoring systems and structures in the past. He doesn't really have the time to facilitate that. He does formal educational stuff now, more online because of COVID, and that's the scalability of his business. So we're looking to work together moving forward to help promote his online courses, which I couldn't be more of an advocate for. And he will help, again, this is all early talks at this stage, to then his support to help me with his systems and structures and his experience to then help with the mentoring of newer trainers pretty much post a lot of his courses. So a lot of his courses are great for trainers that are immediately following their whether it's certificate 3 and 4 in Australia, your first initial qualifications that sort of basically just give you make you insurable, and his courses are great for people who are fresh to the industry. And what I want to try and do on the back end of that is provide a mentoring, whether we are looking at maybe a 12-week program, so structure mentoring system to support people when they're new to the industry, or maybe they've been in the industry a little bit and they've got some experience and they're looking to refine it further and develop themselves further. So definitely Tony in terms of influencing me, and it's also helped me a lot to decipher what I pay attention to online, right? Because back when I first started training back in the early 2000s, the information I got was from Muscle and Fitness Magazine, Flex, Muscular Development, some YouTube stuff. It's very early in the YouTube game as well. And you listen to the guy that's, the biggest in the gym, or I was watching Ronnie Coleman videos, and you're reading articles, and they're in a glossy magazine written by people who are more experienced, more jacked, and know more than you. So you have no reason to question the efficacy of what's being written or what you're seeing. And it's only over time that I've sort of through formal education, my own experience, and learning from other people as well, that you sort of create a better understanding as to what I don't know to call it bullshit, but like know what to take in and what to leave out when taking on new information.
Yeah, I really love your answer there, because a lot of people can say like, who influenced you? And you could easily say like, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger or like Ronnie Coleman or something. It's just like ridiculous. As a like coach, it's really nice that you said that your mentor is a person that influenced you. And I think if we could like, if you're a coach listening to this, to actually try to go out there and find yourself a mentor. It's so easy to completely finish your qualifications and go work in a gym. And like you said before, it's like you think you know it all and you've done it. And I had a similar experience last year. I started working with a mentor, and I learned more in the last like 3 months of the last year than I did in the last 5 years. And suddenly my whole kind of outlook and coaching style, everything started changing. And I think it's really important that people keep pushing that personal development.
Yeah.
Keep trying to keep learning. I think you yourself again are another perfect example of that.
Yeah, well, even I probably will do it. There's a course, 2-day course by Luke Lehman, I think his name is, Muscle Nerds. I don't know if you guys follow those guys, but they've got a 2-day thing down in Melbourne in Australia in May. And I thought to myself, fuck, it's been a while since I've done any in person or any like formal education stuff. Even though some people may see my experience and be like, why would I do that? I'm like, well, learning from someone who's got far more experience than me in an in-person environment, I don't think they've done these before. So it's like, yeah, you shouldn't stop just because you think that there's always something more you can know, even if it's covering topics that I'm like, yeah, I feel confident with these topics, but it's coming from someone who has far more experience and just different experiences and gone a different path. And so whether you just pick up different ways in which to communicate the ideas in which you thought you had developed well and refined well, you don't know what you don't know. If you're open enough to be schooled on something that you think you're good at, you're only going to add to what you already know. So that degree of humility is something that I've picked up over time, and always listening to someone who mightn't be as big as me or lifting as much or as experienced. I'm like, there's still something I can learn, because there's a pathway. You know, it's always interesting to get someone else's rationale on why they think something is efficacious. And like, I give someone the time. I might disagree with them and we can discuss something, which I'm always happy to do, which is, you know, we both parties will learn something from typically. It's like, all right, how did you get to that point? But if it's someone who's much more experienced, it's like there's always shit you can learn. You should never stop. The moment you think you've learned everything, the moment you stop growing, right?
Even if you just go to certain seminars or something and it just confirms something you already know, that's always a positive. If you think, totally, I know this and this is how I work with my clients, or this is what I believe, then somebody else in the industry who you have respect for confirms what you said. Yeah, that's always a positive.
Yeah, 100%. And that's actually it's funny you say that. Yeah, that I've covered that. Well, not covered that. Sorry, I've experienced that a few times where you develop a thought process or your own take on something, and then someone who, as you said, you respect and admire, maybe in the industry longer, and you either chat with them personally or they explain something, whether it be in a video or face-to-face, whatever the case may be, and they're basically reaffirming something that you feel you independently came to that conclusion. You're like, all right, cool, my rationale is tracking well. You know, my headspace is in the right area.
Definitely. Yeah, we put together a little like coaches corner group at the end of last year, and we get all the coaches in Bali to meet up every like second Sunday.
Oh, that's mad.
Yeah, it was really, really useful. We just sit down and we come up with a topic, and we've got all these different coaches from different backgrounds. Yeah. And like you said, it's just a discussion. We put a topic out there, or someone will give a little mini seminar on a topic, and then we'll just discuss it and bring in our different inputs. We actually just all went away with it, like motivated and learned something different, or you heard a different side of something that might not change your opinion, but you can understand it from that point of view, and you might find a certain client that might actually work with.
Mate, it's funny you say that. My ex-girlfriend, we're still close. She when we were together, when she first started, she trained at a facility called Fitness Playground in Sydney. They've got a few there, and what they have within the structure of their facility with their trainers is that every Thursday, I think it was, they would have in-house education led by one of the trainers. So they had a lot of the trainers there that varied quite a lot. They might have a gymnastics background, or they might have a strength and conditioning background. They might be focused more on bodybuilding or whatever the case may be. They'd have a different niche. And they had quite a few trainers, a dozen plus trainers, whatever. And so every week there would be a different trainer would hold a seminar, more or less, PowerPoint presentation, all that sort of jazz, just for the trainers, and would go through a particular topic or whatever they wanted to talk about within their particular field, whatever their expertise might lean towards. And the other coaches would then learn, the specifics of that. And I remember when she first did it, she was doing it on glute training. And other times, she would learn about, again, gymnastics stuff. And I'm like, because I never had that. That wasn't the type of gym that I worked in. It was more to sort of go to your own thing, and which was fine because I was more personally experienced than she was going into the fitness industry. But I remember when she was explaining this to me, I'm like, fuck, that's actually really good. So it sounds very much the same thing, except you're working with experienced coaches across many fields. I'm like, the more, as I said before, the more open you are to learn from other people, it's only going to pay you back in spades, right?
Well, you learn so much more when you take your ego out of it, yeah?
Totally.
That's kind of the key. That's kind of the takeaway from
especially when it's great for both parties, because if you're speaking, it's a really good experience for you as well to potentially be able to do seminars in the future, especially if you're speaking to trainers. Sometimes it can feel a little more daunting because you don't want to potentially say the wrong thing or whatever, but that's a nice thing about doing it in-house. You have a discussion, and you can kind of each bring your own part to it.
There's nothing wrong with saying the wrong thing, because if you say the wrong thing, sometimes people can correct you, then you can go and research that and you learn something new.
Yeah, it's not being afraid.
That's always a good thing. So we'll move on now to question 3. I think I know where this kind of question comes from, but if you could only train 3 times a week, how would you program that?
Me personally?
Well, or for a client.
For a client.
Yeah.
Well, it would be goal dependent, of course, but I would... It's probably one of 2 ways I'd go about it. That would either be 3 whole body days, where I'd prioritize. I'm very biased towards prioritizing a particular lift, whether it be, say, squat, bench, deadlift. I'm not a power lifter, but again, this is a basic structure. And then we're supporting exercises, accessory exercises, supporting that. And so whether that be, so that would be more of a squat day and accessories, bench and accessories, deadlift and accessories, for instance. If it's a female, she might be more lower body focused. There might be 2 lower body days, 1 upper body day. If someone is maybe newer, then it might be 3 whole body days, a combination of both upper body and lower body across the 3 days. And then that also leans towards someone who may be lacking in, who might need more stimulation from their programming in order to maintain accountability. Some people are fine with a more quote unquote boring program, because that boring program is a better facilitator for their results. But if their buy-in to that more boring program isn't there because they need more mental stimulation with the bells and whistles of the program, you kind of need to accommodate that. So you get to learn what makes people tick and what makes people sort of enthused about their training, and if more drop sets and supersets or a combination of upper body and lower body within the same session allows greater adherence, then that's sort of it. The way I describe it to people when it comes to achieving a result, there are so many keys which will open the same door, right? Like someone wants to get bigger or stronger or leaner, whatever the case may be. There's a pathway on the outside of that door. There are a range of keys, each key representing a different programming structure. So many keys will open up that same door and allow you to achieve that result. So, what key you choose, same we were talking about the nutritional adherence in terms of a plan. Same thing. It's like, all right, what will a particular individual adhere to the most for the longevity of said plan? And that comes down to obviously a trial and error, because you might think, oh, this person will like this, and they don't really like it. And you've got to manipulate the program and the planning over time. And
I kind of left that question on purpose because I hate it.
Oh.
But, no, on purpose, because I wanted you to give an answer to the guys out there, which was exactly the answer I wanted to give.
So much variability.
Because I wanted it to be, it's goal dependent.
Yeah.
It's goal and individual dependent. And I really wanted you to say that. And could have told you beforehand, but I didn't want to because it's a question you see on the internet, like whole body versus splits, all that kind of thing. And the key is it's person dependent. It's goal dependent and person dependent.
But yeah, people try to simplify things down too much. And I get questions like that when I throw up a question box on Instagram, for instance. I get, is this better than this? What's the best exercise for this? And what's the best program to do this? And it's like, I understand like the rationale because people are looking for the best, but they don't understand the individual nuance. And as I sort of just started to open up that Pandora's box, explaining the types of variables that are included, which will align with quote unquote the best, because what the best for me may not be the best for you guys, and what the case may be. Like the way I like to train, the best for me to build maximal strength would be very boring for a lot of people. But like that, but me knowing my buy-in to it is that I know that this process for me will achieve the result that I want, which creates the buy-in. Someone else to buy into the process needs more mental stimulation. I don't, because I've developed the habits and the discipline to train. So it comes down to like, again, trial and error. Throw shit against the wall, see what sticks. Do you like that? What don't you like? Because when I first started training with someone started training with me, sorry, and we're running through a program, put something together, because again, you got to get some data on the board first and know how to manipulate it over time, and consult with them along the way. And then before I write the next phase, how'd you like that? What did you like about it? Exercise you didn't like? I'll probably gauge that anyway, just through the face-to-face experience. And then they appreciate the input. They will much more likely stick to it if they know they've had input in it, and we've chosen exercises in which they like, maybe taking things out that they don't, maybe emphasize rep ranges which they're more adherent to, or they will push harder. Some people like to lift a little bit heavier. Okay, we'll just lift heavier. We'll do more total sets
Just
to accommodate for volume and whatnot.
It's just going back to the first thing we spoke about, the thing that people enjoy the most and they're going to be most consistent with.
Yeah, the thing for me is just communication. And if you, as a coach and athlete, you have to have communication from a coaching point with your athlete to make sure they're enjoying it and they're having fun. And the athlete has to understand, why am I doing this and what do I really want? And once you have that communication between the two of you, like you said, there's no one plan fits all. Then you can start to build a plan. And the longer you guys have a relationship together, then the more that plan can start to progress as you get more data and more information fed to you from each other, really. There's definitely in my opinion, two-sided. Like if your client or athlete, whoever, isn't giving you the information that you need to get that information out of your clients.
Of course.
So you can progress with the program.
So that kind of leads on nicely to our last question, which was worded, which I know you're not going to like the wording of it now after saying this, but what's the best accessory movement to improve your squat?
Actually, this one actually I can answer. Because again, it's more like best in my opinion, right? My favorite, right? And because best will obviously depend upon like what is letting down an individual. Like, because an accessory should be there to support something which is lacking or maybe void, or to bolster a bigger movement. So when it comes to a squat, my three favorite are a good morning, or a Romanian deadlift, a Bulgarian split squat, and a single leg Romanian deadlift. And as you notice with all three of those, they are posterior chain dominant, because it's not someone's quads that are going to let them down in a squat.
It's not a coincidence that you've got the biggest glutes in the world. There you go.
You're right.
The
secret's out. So, but it's like to break down the squat, for instance, briefly. It's a combination of obviously leg strength and isometric strength in your back, right? And why someone's butt will typically shoot up in the squat is that their legs are pushing and extending, and they're not accommodating for how slow or how hard rather the back has to work to support the position of the chest and the hips to maintain integrity as you're moving back up in the squat. And so you push with the legs are nice and strong, but the back can't accommodate. So the speed of the movement on the way back up has to be dictated by what the back can sustain, which is why when you hold a better position, it feels like you're going slower. You're just holding a better shape. Again, you're allowing your legs to accommodate what the back can support, right? So a lot of that means that, legs are pushing, quads are pushing. We want to make sure that the glutes, hamstrings, as well as the erectors in the back are up to the task as much as possible. So when it comes to developing any movement, as much as we want to focus on the technique associated with the movement, we'll look at what is it that is letting the team down, or what is likely to let the team down. And with a squat, it's not a matter of if, but when. The squat will always break down in the same way. A more advanced lifter will just have a better capacity in which to sustain good technique through greater levels of fatigue, just through experience and having less chinks in their armor. And the most typical chinks in the armor are going to be glute, hamstring strength. Less hamstring because there's not a huge degree of hamstring in the squat, but glute and erector strength in your back, and an awareness of that positionally as well. And so that's why, if I'm wanting to develop someone's squat in the good morning, the Romanian deadlift, you're going to good morning because of its applicability of the load placement, and then the hinging pattern because it's going to help support the erectors in such a position. The Romanian deadlift, because you can load it, it's a hinge pattern as well, but because of the bar placement, you can load it a lot heavier than, and it does load the erectors differently, which is efficacious as well, but the whole posterior chain heavier. Then you've got the single leg Romanian deadlift, and then the Bulgarian split squat, because they're both focusing unilaterally on the back of the legs, because it's one of those things, even though the way in which you load your leg unilaterally with balance and whatnot is very different to the bilateral movement as a squat. And if there's going to be aspects of your leg development which can't be addressed bilaterally, can only be done unilaterally. And the better you develop your unilateral strength and development, the better you will bolster, and that will transfer into your bilateral movement without having to do any further work on the squat itself. And there's just the way in which you load your glutes, hamstrings, stabilizers of the leg in general, in a unilateral movement. Well, yeah, you just can't develop well enough in your squat. For instance, so we joke around about glutes, right? It's your glutes play a huge role in your squat at the bottom of your squat to help support the drive back up. That's where they're stretched. Now, the glutes are taxed a lot in the squat. They're recruited a lot. But if they're lagging in your squat, which they are for a lot of people, you can't focus on them well enough in your squat because there's so much else going on in the quads, in your back. You need to remove elements of that. Do your Bulgarian split squats, your single leg stuff, your good mornings, all those stuff that sort of basically take out that emphasis from the bigger movement, work on it by itself. You still work on the squat, and then bolster your squat, with a greater development in the back of the legs. I give very few people isolated or like focused quad work, because quads are not what lets you down. And it's also great for the knees, because most people have knee complaints and knee issues just due inferior hamstring and glute strength, and they have such strong and tight quads. Anytime they drive their knee forward over their toe, you might get like a sharp pain there on the knee, for instance, or whatever the issue may be. It's because you have this imbalance of strength between these very strong quads and disproportionately weaker and underdeveloped posterior chain muscles.
Yeah, that's super interesting. On the podcast here, we always talk about things outside the gym that make you better inside the gym, and we touched on this last week with the Pilates stuff when we had Lauren on as a guest, and that was kind of like life outside the squat that can help you inside the squat. And it's like, if you do, say for example, like you go to the gym and you're inexperienced, you're like, I want a big squat, I'm just going to squat. And if you actually look at everything outside of the squat, like the 3 exercises you just mentioned, you can potentially just do them and get better at squatting without even squatting.
Yeah.
And you go back to your squatting and suddenly your positions are much stronger, and it's the positions and the strength in those positions that are going to bring you that overall strength.
Yeah, totally. So for me, like moving forward in life, I see myself leaning on and the value of those exercises is because they're so challenging unilaterally on one leg, that the load necessary to create a high stimulus, a great stimulus on the target areas is quite low. So the stress on your joints and the overall systemic stress is quite low, which is a nice healthy balance for a big back squat, because with a back squat, high CNS demand, stress on the joints, all that sort of stuff. So a nice healthy balance to that are movements which are lighter, challenging with a lighter load, with a high stimulus on the muscle, but low stress on the joints and the CNS. And so it's a nice healthy balance within a program design to ensure that the whole training day, for instance, if they were within the same training day or across the week, is moderate, right? And so recoverability is great, as you're not just smashing yourself with heavy squats and then another heavy bilateral movement, which is really well supported. You're challenging the support, and again, it's more of an intelligent way to go about things.
Building that longevity through smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Program, yeah.
I think the listeners at home are super lucky to be able to listen to that, because I don't think there could have been a better answer. So I think the listeners at home, I think the listeners at home will be super happy.
Free breakfast.
So what we're going to do now, we're going to move on to 3 sections which we talk about with all of our guests, and it's just our viewers a little chance to learn a little bit more about you. So the section 1 is going to be, what's the most important thing you do outside the box or gym that helps you inside the box or gym?
I suppose this in life is me time, right? So for me, I as a trainer, you start early in the morning, typically finish, you bookend your day training people. I do, at least anyway, and you give a lot of yourself to other people, right? And especially first thing in the morning, you give a lot to other people. And before I've had any chance to give anything back to me, any time dedicated to me, I'm pretty spent, physically and psychologically. You're on an hour at a time, with someone, and then next you're on, and then whatever the case may be. Before you've had time to sit down, give some time to yourself, it's been 4 or 5 hours, or whatever the case may be, however busy your morning may be, and you expended all this energy for other people. Giving back to yourself is sort of like the last thing you want to do. You want to have a nap, or you just want to zone out. But what I have more recently, over the last sort of few years, become better at doing is and sort of non-negotiable for me. I've got a little whiteboard at home, sort of look at it all the time. Is me time in the morning. So I live by the beach, fortunate enough, in Sydney. If the weather is shitty, I'll do something inside. But I'll either go, if it's a peak of summer and the sun's up super early, I'll go for a swim in the ocean first thing. If not, I'll go for a walk. There's a nice coastal walk along near where I live. Might step outside for half an hour. No music on, no podcasts. I used to do that a bit, and I found that I was sort of unintentionally, I suppose, distracting myself, and not giving back to me. And the stillness that I experience, it's meditative almost, right? I'm very busy-minded, and so being out there, there's something about being up early in the morning before everyone else. The sun might be up, it's kind of getting up, there's only a few people, you give hey, you going, you walk past every now and then, get a coffee in the morning, go back, and then just that little bit of giving back to me, bit of time for myself, freedom in my head to think about whatever the fuck I want to think about, and the lightness that I feel going into my day, having sort of set the tone, so to speak, without trying to sound too wishy-washy with what
you are in Bali.
Preaching. I know.
In Bali. You're allowed to be spiritual.
I feel very Bali, but because I, for many years, would just wake up early in the morning. I used to start at the gym at 5 a.m. Monday to Friday all the time, 6 a.m. on Saturday, and you just give your time and energy to other people, and it's fucking draining. And so when I shifted towards, giving back to me a bit, I always enjoyed what I've been doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it as a trainer. But it just became less stressful. Yeah, not that I didn't feel stressed anyway. It was one of those things that you just feel better, for lack of a better term.
I think it's something all 3 of us can probably agree on, that people don't understand that our job is a service. You're a service professional. You've got to be on all the time. You're almost like an actor. You've got to, because people are paying to spend time with you.
It's a performance, right? Yeah, you're going to be on. Yeah.
If people are paying to spend time with you, you've got to be the best version of yourself. If they want to come to you with their problems and talk about their problems, that's fine, but you can't do that with them. You've got to be the happy, smiley, positive person all the time. And that's really tough sometimes.
Yeah, and you've only got a certain amount of that you've given a day, and I think that even if you do start your day the way that you do, then you've had that time for yourself, and suddenly the rest of the day is so much better.
Yeah.
You're in a better mood, and you kind of like set yourself up for a good day.
It was crazy to me. Like the first instance for that was a couple of years ago when it wasn't as busy over Christmas time, people going away, and I'm like, oh fuck it, sun's up early, I'll go for a swim, and it became, you know, every day went for a swim for like a month in a row. Like if the weather was a bit shitty, it wouldn't really matter because the sun wasn't really up yet, so I didn't care if it was that great or not of a day. I'm getting wet, and it was just a short little have a coffee, back to training people at home, and I was never in a bad mood, but like I was like lifted, right? And when I came a bit busier and the sun wasn't up as early, I still found that I'd make the effort to wake up early enough so I'd go a bit of a walk and get back and giving back to me, and try to continue that the best I can. And the weather's been a bit shitty back in Sydney at the moment. I'll just wake up a little bit earlier, do some stretching or do something in which to give back to me before I start my day. And again, it just sets the tone.
Yeah, I do a similar thing, and for me it's something that I never ever regret doing. It's like even my alarm goes off some mornings, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to go.
You can't be asked, yeah.
And then you go, or you don't go, you take one morning off, and then you wake up like an hour later and you're like, oh, I wish I'd have just
Yes, totally. Yeah, and you got to remind yourself that. You got to try and like knock yourself in the head when that alarm goes off. You're like, I'll be fine if I don't do it. And then when you don't do it, you got to try and recall that the next time that you want to pie it off.
Yeah, totally.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to move straight on to section 3 because we are a little bit short on time. So what we're going to talk about now is this is your kind of philosophy on training, what we spoke about before. So how we use strength training for longevity, how we transfer that to other skills outside the gym. Kind of what you're all about.
I suppose, yeah, well for me, like my training philosophy sort of, I suppose, like developed over time, and there's so many transferable values that training physically and the tactile development of your physical self can translate into other aspects of your life. You know, confidence being the main thing for me, and not just me personally, but the way that I've seen that transfer into other people, whether it be because they feel more confident in how they look or their physical capacity in which to do things, being stronger or being in better shape, being better looking from, you know, whatever that may mean to them, then allows them to be more confident, and then the knock-on effect that creates in their life is unquestionable. So emphasizing that as a way in which to coach people, and that's sort of my path to how I structure that. Going back to what I was saying with my objective as a trainer is to ensure that my clients are enjoying the process, enjoying what they're doing, not just following a plan, because anyone can get a plan off the internet and follow sets and reps and things like that. And it's like, well, that's all well and good now for the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It's like we want to be training for the next several decades. And whether we're talking, say, like longevity, right? Like I trained both my mum and my dad, and old man's 71 this year, mum's 63, maybe something like that, 64. And when I talked to them, and they weren't, my mum wasn't a hard sell, my dad was a little bit tougher, but even if you look at my old man, say 71, he'll tell me every issue he's got under the sun, but give it another 10 years. 10 years of training is a long time, right? You'd say consistent 4 or 5 days a week, most days of the year, over 10 years, that's a lot of training. It doesn't have to be breaking records. Just my favorite analogy, which I say to all my clients, it's just like and all he needs to do is place one brick down at a time and build a wall over time, one brick. So it's sort of like, it's going to take a while before that pile of bricks represents a wall. But if you understand the process of build, you know, one session, one a day, bang, place one brick down, the next day, another brick, it's going to take a while. But 10 years of laying those bricks down, you're going to have a pretty substantial looking wall. And even between the ages of, say, 71 and 81, he's been training for a few years now anyway, but you become, him as an example, become an outlier of an 80-plus-year-old individual in terms of physical capacity and independency and all that sort of stuff. And so if we're able to, if I'm able to, as a 33-year-old, develop good habits, good discipline, you know, understanding of like how to take care of myself physically, as well as, while I'm getting good results and just achieving, little goals that I want to achieve along the way from, lifts and whatnot. And then because maintenance is so much easier than progression. So focus on progressing myself as much as I can now, while my body's in a good shape to do so, and then just manipulate expectations over time. And then when I hit 50 and 60 and things like that, and appropriately scale back volumes and intensities and loads and things like that, you become this outlier of an individual. I'm very curious to see from what our generation will be like moving forward in 30, 40 years time, because of the popularity and the normalcy of lifting weights, both across men and women. When I first started training 20 years ago, early 2000s, girls did not train. Girls did not lift weights in the gym. So give it another, 10, 20, 30 years when we're all a bit older, that becomes more normalized, and new generations come through and do the same. Be very interesting to see from a general health perspective what is the norm of a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old lifting weights and doing all the things that I know when I was first started. Someone who was 50 was like had one foot in the grave.
You'd like to hope it's just extending the quality of life.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually so inspiring and motivating to hear from people as well, because I feel like society just says you get to like 60, 70 years old and life's over. And it's like, if you can keep progressing through it, like, why should it be over? Like, why give up and just sit in front of the TV? It's
so many people just accept getting old and sort of the conventional idea of, I'm old, I can't do things. So no. The list of things in which you can do, it will far outweigh the list of things you can't. It's a matter of perspective and what you choose to focus on. You choose to focus on, you choose to focus on the few things in which you can't do because you used to be able to do them. That's the difference. That's what you look at, right? That's what I dealt with my old man. He used to be a good athlete when he was younger, and especially as male, bit of an ego knock, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. That's fine. You're fucking 70, mate. Oh, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you haven't really taken great care of your body the last few decades. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, we'll make the best of a bad situation. You can still do a lot. And it's just about being intelligent with programming, understanding what your limitations are, working within them as much as you can. If there is the capacity to push them a little bit, and develop those things which you say you can't do, towards something that you may be able to do. Happy days. You just have to be patient enough, because your ability to adapt and develop later in life is going to be more difficult, but also that should give greater encouragement to make those changes earlier on in life. So when you're later in life, it just becomes the norm, and you've maintained physical independency, strength, high bone mineral density, elasticity of tendons, ligaments, and joint health and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's so awesome to be able to, like, encouraging as a trainer and rewarding to be able to give that, like, gift back to someone.
Oh, so much so.
In life, and you're there like, I'm basically giving this person life, I'm making their life better because of what we're able to do inside the gym, which kind of links back to our whole, usually it's the opposite, we're looking at things we do outside the gym to make our life better inside the gym in this podcast. But like you say, when you get to that age, you can do stuff inside the gym that's going to make everything else in your life so much better.
Well, that's more or less, like, you talk about like training principles, ethos and stuff like that. It's quite contradictory to your emphasis of your podcast.
That's what we want.
But it's more or less your training philosophy, right? It's sort of like the better developed you are as a individual, and doing so within the gym. You're teaching your body how to move well. What are the best ways in which to load your body through efficient movement, safe movement, loading your back properly through your legs and all that sort of stuff, and doing that in a focused way. So when you're moving incidentally, the 23 hours of the day you're not in the gym, or whatever you might be doing, apart from sleep, of course, your body has been taught how to move well, how to be loaded safely and correctly, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to grab the railing when you're older to go up the stairs or whatever the case may be. If you you got to trip, because I've trained a number of older people, my folks, and other people as well. You know, if you trip on something, you can plant your foot to catch yourself, or plant your hands out and you catch yourself, and you'll be fine. You've got to break a bone because your bone mineral density is high because you've been lifting weights for 20 plus years. And it's all these things that you ideally don't have to think about as you get older, and it's very easy to implement. You just got to do it, as soon as you can.
I think what's really nice there for the viewers to listen to was that there's two kind of things that make you happy, make us all happy as trainers, and one's making people feel more comfortable in their own skin, and two's allowing people to use their body to do more for a longer period of time.
Totally.
And I think that's a great kind of way to leave that kind of section. What we are going to do now is going to ask you a question which we ask all of our guests. And me and Sam answered it in episode 1. If you guys want to go and check that out, it is: if you were starting your journey now, what's the one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Say one piece of advice. Something along the. I'm trying to create a good soundbite, right?
It's like that big quote. There you go.
Brain's ticking. It's something. Be something along the lines of like maintaining humility, and so educationally, don't think that you've learned too much. You can never learn too much. So keeping an open mind and always being open to learning from anyone ever. I learn so much from my clients, just from a coaching perspective, because I will be incredibly repetitious, as you can imagine, going through the same stuff with people all over and over and over and over again. And that's what's allowed me to refine my ability to coach people well and communicate well, because I've done it so many times. And I'm continually finding newer and better, more efficient, more digestible ways in which to explain a particular idea. And that learning has been fantastic. So I suppose, I'm trying to think of a good soundbite as I'm rambling on. Just be open-minded enough to appreciate that you've never learned as much as you can possibly learn.
Yeah.
I think if
we got that.
I went Rayman for a second. I had to look up for it.
I think if we're all honest, a lot of people who come into our industry are maybe do it for different reasons. Maybe insecurities are reasons why a lot of people get into personal training and stuff. And I think when you're telling somebody that when we're starting our journey, to leave your ego at the door and be susceptible and open to learning as much as possible of as many different people as possible, that's always going to be a good piece of advice for anyone.
Yeah, like I said, my training ethos, my coaching ethos is that I wish I bumped into, to be the trainer that I wish I bumped into when I first started. Yeah. But in saying that, I wouldn't be the trainer that I am or incentivized the way I am if I hadn't spent so many years doing things inefficiently. So it's quite paradoxical.
Character building.
Yeah, and sort of it has incentivized me to be that type of trainer, because I didn't have that type of trainer at that age.
Just learn from your lesson.
He was unpacking that while I'm high as shit.
Okay, so you never guess what I did yesterday?
Oh no.
I went to the bank yesterday.
Oh. No, I'm no good, but yeah, go on.
I went to the bank yesterday.
I certainly did.
And
tell us what happened at the bank.
And it really made me feel positive about human interaction again and give me a bit of a lease of life.
Oh, that's nice.
Because a clown held the door open for me. I thought he was a really nice jester.
Every week he laughs at his own joke when no one else laughs.
I'm thinking, where is this going to go?
You laughing at your joke isn't going to make us laugh, mate.
I'm here to entertain myself, that's all. Go on then, Samuel.
Well, I keep telling my dad jokes, but he never laughs.
Thanks,
I like that.
I'm waiting for the joke.
Look, I'm just gonna rip these. I'm gonna rip mine straight off the internet. Dad, can I eat the cake in the fridge? Sure, but the dining room would probably be more comfortable. Yeah, exactly.
That makes me feel better about mine, surely.
On that note.
Okay, guys, so I hope all of you guys at home have learnt something, and you're still sticking around to hear these amazing jokes.
I've got another one.
Oh no, we started a new.
I always keep my guitar in the car now. It's good for traffic jams.
You're definitely on the Dad Jokes Instagram page.
That's exactly what I have.
Read all that.
For the rest of the day.
So I hope that you guys at home have learned something and enjoyed it. What we're going to do next week, Samuel?
Next week we've got another special guest. There's a big array of really experienced and interesting people in Bali at the moment, so we're going to try to get everyone in here. So yeah, the next few weeks are looking super exciting. And yeah, I just want to say thanks, Sean. If anyone wants to ask any more questions, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Sean SEAN.McInroy MCINROY. And my coaching page is also on there, apex.strength.society. I've got an online strength school if you're interested in being coached by me, which the link is in my bio on both pages. So if you're keen to be coached by me, hit that up. Otherwise, pay attention. I put out some great fucking content.
Do you want to go? Where can people find you, Samuel?
Oh, they can find me on Life Outside the Box Instagram, or they find me on my personal Instagram at sambish92.
At Sambish92.
And yours?
Mine is at Mike Nico. So thanks for that. Cheers for listening, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's Life Outside.
No one. Peace out, guys. See you next week. Thank you.